Hey, Dave Dynasty Show fans, this is Sign Guy on assignment for the Dave Dynasty Show. Today we are talking about the Varsity Club, and who better than the man himself to talk about the Varsity Club, the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be with us on the Dave Dynasty Show today.
Anything for you, Sign Guy, anything.
Well, the first question we have is, the Varsity Club came together with you, Mike Rotunda, Rick Steiner around 1987. Whose idea was putting the group together creatively, and how did that idea come about?
It was Dusty Rhodes' idea. It was a great idea. Three letter athletes in wrestling, and then you bring a guy that's completely on the opposite end of the spectrum. And you're saying to yourself, when you're looking at this, there's three clean-cut guys standing there, and there's a guy with a black robe on. This doesn't make sense. So, and during that time period, there was all kinds of scandals in colleges with the athletes about, drinking, partying, and different rules they had broken. So it worked out. Dusty had a brilliant, brilliant mind.
Was the plan from the beginning always for you, Rotundo, and Steiner, or were there talks of bringing other people into the group at the start of it?
Well, we were negotiating at the time with Dr. Death. He was in Japan, and he would have been and he was the perfect extra guy. I don't think the Varsity Club, meaning Rotunda, Dr. Death, and Steiner, get the recognition they deserve. They were brilliant, and they played a brilliant role, and they were legitimate athletes, and they could beat 98% of anybody up. And it was not that means anything in wrestling, but especially it worked back in those days, because people want to try to wrestle them sometimes after the show, and if they did, the three of them would tie the guys in knots. There wasn't an easy pin there between the three of those guys, that's for sure.
There's a lot of other collegiate wrestlers that were in the professional ranks at that time. Did you have conversations with anyone else at the start of it to see if anybody else was going to fit?
No, we didn't want it to get too blown up, and it was something you could control with me, Rotundo, and Rick, and then eventually when Doc would be in and out, so it was easy to control.
At the end of 1988, Rick Steiner turned against you and left the group after you guys had insulted him for a period of time. Rick Steiner was really over and sympathetic. Whose idea was it to turn Steiner against the Varsity Club, or was it something that you were building to from the start?
No, we weren't building it from the start. The people actually made us switch Steiner, because we were going to towns and they were booing me and Rotunda, but they were cheering for Rick. And I was still wrestling, and sometimes it'd be me and Steiner and Mike on the floor, and sometimes it'd be me and Mike with Rick on the floor. And during that period, Rick would screw up in the ring, and if he was on the floor, he'd make fun of me and Mike. So the people, and he had Alex, that he talked to, and so I went to Dusty and I said, we can't keep going like this, because we're swimming against the stream. And I said, we need to turn them, and we turned them, and we drew big money with Rick Steiner as a babyface. And I don't think he's ever got the credit he deserves as a babyface.
I agree with you there. He was huge as a babyface right after that.
Yeah. Every night when I go to bed, I Rick, because he gave me a clothesline in Boston Garden when I pulled a rib on him, that my neck still feels it. 30 years later.
I bet. About that same time as when Dr. Death came in to replace Steiner, what did he think about joining the Varsity Club?
He was all for it. It worked well for him. And do you know why there was not more explanation as to why Williams joined other than he just had a collegiate background? Was there another backstory they were thinking of when they brought him into it, or is it just he had the background and fit the gimmick? Yeah, we did have a backstory, but we didn't need to use it because Steiner left and we had to fill the spot. So I made a thing, I think, on an interview Mike did, that we got a much better amateur wrestler, and Doc truthfully was. And, that we got the answer to stop Steiner. So if we had gone further, maybe needed the backstory, we probably would have used it, but we didn't need it.
You say that Dr. Death was a better amateur than Rick. Did you ever see the two of them go at it just sparring around?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with Dr. Death was a better amateur athlete with his record, and I'm not just putting Michigan down, but it's not Oklahoma, you know what I mean? And Dr. Death, I believe, was 2 or 3-time national champion. Well, Rick was national champion once or twice, but Doc was, they were both equal to the task, but Dr. Death was a little bit more experienced. And he had played other sports, football and pro football.
In early 1989, Dan Spivey joined to make the group a quartet. Was this then to fill the void of the Four Horsemen disbanding, and was the intent for the Varsity Club to be the prominent stable?
No, Dusty had started Dan, who I have the utmost respect for, and he thought it'd be a good fit. I started at that time. I would have liked to see Dan on his own, because now you're replacing guys and you're getting lost in the shuffle. I go back to the NWO. The NWO never should have been, in my estimation, more than Hogan, Nash, Hall, and Kidd. Once they started loading it up, it watered it down and took away the uniqueness of it and the legitimacy of it. And I think we made that mistake earlier, but it wasn't. The Varsity Club in no way was on the level of drawing money, even though the Varsity Club drew a lot of money. I mean, they're still trying to catch the NWO lightning in a bottle, almost 30 years later, right?
Right. Now, Dan Spivey came from Georgia. I don't know a whole lot about his amateur background. Would you say he was on the same level as an amateur wrestler as what Steiner, Rotundo, and Williams was? Or was he
the
college athlete that joined?
Yeah, he was a college athlete. He played at Kentucky. I believe he was an All-American in Kentucky, but, we all know about Danny's left hand. He knocked a lot of people out, and Danny was tough as nails. So he complimented the group, but it wasn't Danny's fault. He came in, and I think Danny would have been better by himself.
Now, about the time that Williams and Spivey joined, was there ever any talks of bringing Ron Simmons into the group?
No. I had wanted Ron to be a babyface and win the World Heavyweight Championship in Atlanta on Martin Luther King Day, in Coretta King and Martin Luther III give him the belt. I was shot down with that idea. But I thought we would have made national publicity, Coretta King putting the belt on Ron Simmons' waist. We would have been off and running with positive publicity.
No, I definitely think you would have, sure.
Yeah.
When Williams and Spivey left in 1989, the Varsity Club was essentially you and Mike Rotundo. Were there discussions to revamp the group and find new members, or did the office just decide that the time had come and gone for the stable?
I think that we might have talked about it, but I think we all realized, just like anything else, anything has a shelf life. Some last longer than others. It's unfortunate that things happen because, again, as I said before, I think Doc, Rotunda, and Steiner were one of the greatest groups I've ever seen.
There was a brief reunion in 1999 with you, Rotundo, and Steiner. How did the idea come to be for the group to get back together in '99?
That was an idea that came up with somebody had brought the idea up, and Russo decided to go with it. And Duggan was involved in that match. I didn't think it was appropriate to do it, but you know, I sometimes you can't go back and live in the past. Steiner Rotunda had gone different ways, and bring it back, and if we only were one match, if we had stayed longer, it would have been better.
At that point, you had the cheerleader Leah Meow. Whose idea was that?
Truthfully, at that time, I'm not sure whose it was that, and they were stealing people from Paul Heyman because we had taken a bunch of people. That might have been their idea at the time. Just we were raiding Paul. I would call him up at 6 weeks' notice and tell him, "Hey, this is going to happen. Nothing I could do." But then when they found out I was talking to Paul and giving them a heads up, they went around me.
That cheerleader idea kind of seems like a natural fit. Was it ever brought up early in the group's existence to bring in a cheerleader?
No, because we were trying to be as serious as we could. And I understand, now that I look at it, it would have worked perfectly. But at the time, I think Dusty didn't want to rock the boat with those guys that were so solid.
And when you look back with your time at the Varsity Club, why do you feel that it's often overlooked as a successful stable? Why do you think people don't remember it on the same level as the Four Horsemen or the Dangerous Alliance or groups like that?
This was only for a short time. You know, it had a brief run. As brilliant it was it could have been when we turned Steiner babyface with Dr. Death coming in. It could have been as hot as going against Rick and have Rick get special partners all over. I think we were a brilliant comet in the sky that burnt out too quickly.
Our Varsity Club did have some championships. Mike Rotundo was the Florida heavyweight champion when they still recognized it when you first formed it. He was the television champion for a long time. You and Dr. Death had the U.S. tag team titles. Do you think that the success that you had often gets overlooked because you were champions in a few different divisions of the company?
Right, and Steiner went on to bigger and greater things. Dr. Death had a magnificent career in Japan. Mike had a great career in WWE. So I think that sometimes people don't realize where the genesis started from.
During the feud with Steiner, you and Rotundo would play mind games with him and talk about his dog in the back and try to distract him and things like that. And that's what led to his brother Scott coming in to counteract what you were doing to him. Was the Varsity Club always meant to be kind of a catalyst to bring in Scott Steiner, or was that just something that evolved naturally?
It evolved naturally. I mean, I like to think that we were that smart, but Scott had just started wrestling, and he had started with Dick the Bruiser, and then went on to Memphis, and Rick came to me and said, I'd like to bring my brother in. I said, it'd be perfect. So it was no great idea. It was just something that happened, and it became very fruitful.
Just considering Scotty's background as an amateur wrestler, was it ever considered to bring him in to replace his brother in the Varsity Club?
Well, I was dead set against, and now it's a common thing, I was dead set against brother versus brother. I mean, in real life, I always want to put it this way. I still want people to, I understand, we all know it's a work, but I don't want to insult people's intelligence. And at one time, when I first got into wrestling, boxing and wrestling were kissing cousins. Sign guy, have you ever seen two fight the Klitschko brothers? Right, they're both world heavyweight champions at different companies, right?
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? The German brothers.
Yep.
The heavyweight champions.
Yep.
Did they ever fight? No.
I've never known them to have a fight.
No. So what I'm getting at is, I don't think people will accept that brothers are going to fight for money. Yeah, brothers fight all the time, but they fight in the house. I just never liked that idea.
Well, looking back on the entire history of the Varsity Club, where do you see the legacy of the group?
Well, I think the legacy of the group was maybe I'm out of line here, but a precursor to Brock Lesnar, where a guy that was a legit guy got to be put in the forefront. Anyway, that's what I think. So,
well, that is all the questions we have for you today, and I want to thank you again for being on with us. We appreciate it greatly, and hopefully fans will jump on their WWE network and take a look at the Varsity Club, which I always felt was an underrated stable. I always enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Nine Guys. You guys have a good day.
You too. We'll talk to you soon. Dave Dynasty Show fans, thanks for letting me on today, talking with Kevin Sullivan about the Varsity Club. Enjoy the rest of the show.